อยากเป็นอยากให้เห็นกล้องเลยเห็นกล้องเลย
เห็นไม่ได้เลย
from the Academy of Physics of Taiwan. First of all, I would like to ask your cooperation to turn off your mobile phone. In this way, our speaker and your neighboring participants will not be disturbed during the seminar. From December 2003 through March 2004, the Ministry of Science and Technology is hosting 12 seminars by Nobel Laureates in physics, chemistry, and medicine. These activities are part of the British Dialogue towards Social Peace program, which is hosted by the International Peace Foundation. The Office of ASEAN for Peace organizes two of the seminars. The first one, which is happening today, will be given by Professor Yuan T, a Nobel Laureate. It is my great honor to invite the Secretary General of the Office of ASEAN for Peace, Mr. Yuan T, to give a welcome address and the opening remarks.
Mr. Secretary General, Uwe Morawetz, President of the British. President of the British program. Professor Yuan T, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the special seminar on science, technology, and peace on Earth. On behalf of the Office for Peace, I am honored to host this event together with the Ministry of Science and Technology, the International Peace Foundation, and the British program. I thank the Department of Science Service for providing society. This seminar provides an opportunity for us to think about how we can build our scientific knowledge to create technology that will benefit the community at large. I am very honored and excited on this matter. At this auspicious moment, I would like to wish Professor Uwe a beautiful stay in Thailand and fruitful seminar.
Chairman of the Board of Directors of the International Peace Foundation to give us a brief.
As a contribution to the Decade for Culture of Peace and Nonviolence, initiated and promoted by the United Nations General Assembly in the year 2000, Thailand has been chosen as the host country for the event series Bridges, Dialogues Towards Culture of Peace, initiated by the International Peace Foundation, a non-political independent foundation under the common patronage of the 21 Nobel Peace Prize laureates based in Vienna. Thailand has been chosen for the following reasons. The Thai nation and its people, with their self-confidence, open-mindedness, and tolerance, could provide a creative pathway towards peace. Under the wisdom and spiritual leadership of His Majesty the King, as the shining example for inner and outer peace, a democratic Thailand has the ability to promote peace and the potential to stabilize the region. It is a rich, diversified network of national and international organizations, including business, diplomats, media, and NGOs, which provide the ground for enhanced intercultural dialogue. Dialogue, the culture of peace and nonviolence, are deeply rooted in Thai society not only as concepts, but as a common practice in the form of and the process towards the middle way. Based on this knowledge and wisdom, Thailand could become an international platform from which the spiral of violence and racism, which dominates the world of today, could turn into a deep understanding of both aspects of peace and pluralism, which have been neglected for too long. In a series of 250 lectures and dialogues to join hands with Thai leaders in all parts of society, which are being held in Bangkok, Chiang Rai, Chonburi, ไทยสนับสนุนและร่วมมือให้ทำให้โครงการสานสัมพันธ์สันติวัฒนธรรมได้เกิดขึ้นจริงๆซึ่งโครงการนี้ได้รับแรงบันดาลใจจากการได้เห็นพระบาทสมเด็จพระเจ้าอยู่หัวทรงงานหนักเพื่อสันติภาพและความมั่งคั่งของประสบนิกรรวมทั้งรักษาวัฒนธรรมขนบประเพณีอันงดงามและจันทร์ไว้ซึ่งศาสนาในโอกาสนี้ผมขอขอบคุณศาสตราจารย์ยวนทีและประธานทุกท่านที่ได้เดินทางมาร่วมและสนับสนุนกิจกรรมโดยไม่รับค่าดอกเบี้ยใดๆและผมขอขอบคุณกระทรวงวิทยาศาสตร์และเทคโนโลยีรวมทั้งผู้ให้การสนับสนุนและพันธมิตรทุกท่านสำหรับความร่วมมืออันสำคัญนี้วันนี้ผมขอเชิญแขกผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านก้าวสู่สันติวัฒนธรรมโดยการสัมเสวนาความเข้าใจและความเคารพซึ่งกันและกันร่วมกันในงานครั้งนี้และต่อไปขอบคุณมากครับ
Later as a professor in chemistry at the University of Chicago. In 1974, he returned to the University of California at Berkeley as a professor of chemistry and a principal investigator at the Berkeley Laboratory. Together with Professor Dudley R. Hirschberg and Professor Yuan T. he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1980 and was the president of the Academy of Sinica in Taipei. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Yuan T.
Secretary General for the Office of Government. For my younger friend, heard my story, they always said, then why send the kid to school? If you can send the kid to the nature, to learn from the nature, certainly it would be a better thing. The end of the school, at the end of the Second World War, had a great impact on me. Taiwan was returned to China from Japan. And during the transition, I learned not to accept things as they are given. I started to ask many questions and learned that things can change and you can make it happen. I was on a bookworm. When I was young, during 5th and 6th grade, I spent more effort in baseball and ping pong than in my studies, since I was a good player in both and was on the championship team of the whole island. In high school, my life came to a big turning point when I became ill and was bedridden for a month. This month changed my life. I suddenly felt that life is precious and one should make good use of it. I decided that I could and should become a useful person and make a contribution through science. I was not happy with what I saw around me. I became quite rebellious and always looked for a better way to do things and try to improve different things surrounding me. I still remember that in my geometry class, in one of the tests, I just did not want to use the method. The teacher told us to prove a set of problems. The set of problems all related to proving 3 points in the straight line. Instead of using the teacher's method, I found entirely new ways to prove them, which caused quite a stir. The teacher did not know whether she should give me a 0 or 100. But she was kind enough to ask me to prove the program in front of my class. And after prove the sexual program, and all my classmates understood what I've done. Then my teacher did give me 100 score. After I entered the National Taiwan University, the only thing in my mind was to become a good scientist. I studied hard and wanted to go beyond what the university could give me at that time. I was somewhat disappointed when I asked my senior student, so I studied hard, took all the courses in Department of Chemistry, am I going to be a good chemist? But I was told, no, there's no chance, because in Department of Chemistry, I was not learning enough quantum mechanics, statistical mechanics, electricity, magnetism, electronics. And if you want to be a good chemist, you do have to understand all those physics behind it. So I took many courses from other departments and participated in many self-study groups. By the time I finished my undergraduate study in Taiwan University and received a master's degree from Tsinghua University, I became confident that I could solve some scientific problems and decided to pursue my PhD in the United States. That was in 1962. When I arrived at Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley, and started to work with late Professor Mayhem, I was so much shocked. Professor Mayhem and I decided to work on a program of chemical ionization of excited atoms. He gave me a research subject, and whenever I tried to ask him how I should pursue or how I should solve a certain problem, his answer was always, how do I know? If I knew the answer, I would have solved it long ago. He encouraged me to find a way to solve it. And for the next 3 years, when he came to see me in the laboratory, his first question was, what's new? After I explained to him what I found, he then asked, what are you going to do next? For it was certainly not easy for a young graduate student like me to always find some new things and know what to do next. At one point, I had some doubt. I thought that I had come all the way from Taiwan to work with a distinguished scientist in a famous university, only to find that my professor did not teach me much. He honestly did not seem to know what he wanted me to do. I keep on remembering in high school, teacher seems to know everything. In university, teacher knows something. Sometimes they do not know something. In the graduate schools, when we are working on research, professor does not seem to know anything. But then, I found that I was wrong. In fact, there's nothing more important for a young scientist than to be independent, to learn to solve problems themselves, and come up with many new ideas to solve difficult problems, and to know exactly what problem to tackle next. And I owe a great deal to Professor Mayhem. When I entered the third year as a graduate student, Professor Mayhem told me that I could write my thesis to obtain PhD degree. I was so much surprised. And I protested quite strongly. I said, I came from Taiwan. You keep on asking me, what's new? What are you going to do next? But aside from I told him about what I've done, what I'm going to do, you never teach me anything, and now you want to kick me out. The Professor Mayhem said, no. I'm going to take sabbatical in Oxford next year. So if you want, you can stay and do whatever you want. So that was the time I decided I want to use the beam scattering method beam or ion and molecule in the vacuum chamber and follow the trajectories, how the products scattered, how much energy released, and try to understand chemical reaction from single collisions and try to visualize how chemical reaction takes place when two molecules collide. So I did build a machine and it was a successful experiment on ion molecule reaction. Then I went to Harvard University as a postdoc fellow and continued on the neutral beam experiment. And then actually was their facilities. So students from Berkeley, Santa Barbara, Chicago, all throughout Taiwan and use of facility to try to understand how chemical reaction takes place. So I was quite happy in the last 10 years after I came back to Taiwan. I've shown my colleagues in America that although Asia is lagging behind with some effort, we have enough good people here to do the best science, as good as anybody else, and as good as anything happening in the world. Okay, let me switch to my topic, science, technology, and peace on Earth. The world is changing very quickly during the last 50 years, maybe during the last 100 years. And we do see many causes of conflict that we really have to look at it very carefully, especially from a scientific point of view. There are many things which cause some concern. For thousands of years, the planet Earth seems to be infinitely large, and reaching its end seems to be an impossible task. The biosphere, which was created after billions of years after creation of the universe and solar system, if you look from the satellite, it's beautiful with ocean and all green field, but the biosphere is very thin shell on the surface of the Earth. Biosphere is very, very thin. And because the Earth was so immense, the human activity, especially when the population was small, did not seem to impact the biosphere. Evolution of the biosphere is such that many species coexist, and mankind, a part of the biosphere, is part of the nature. But since the Industrial Revolution, which took place 250 years ago, and particularly during the 20th century, the situation changed dramatically. In the last century, the population has increased from 1.5 billion people to 6 billion people, spread out. So if you trace the history of mankind for millions of years, even after agriculture started 10,000 years ago, population did not increase very much. But after the Industrial Revolution 250 years ago, population went up very rapidly in last century, and very quickly. Now we do have 6 billion people on Earth. And also with the advancement of communication technology and transportation equipment, in relative terms, the Earth has shrunk. In 1492, Christopher Columbus, when he discovered America, it takes many months on the ocean. It takes only 2 days to make one trip over the world. That might not be a fortunate thing. I myself have been traveling around the world several times just during the last 2 months. Even though this transition, this sudden transition from biosphere used to be in infinite space, now become a finite space. So many people consuming so many materials and dump so many waste in biosphere. cannot absorb all the waste we are putting in. And that transition from infinity to finite will have significant consequences. But a human society seems to be ill-equipped to adapt to the new limited reality. We didn't seem to know that Earth is limited. We still follow the trajectory of our ancestors and assuming Earth is infinity. And on this limited Earth, with so many people pursuing unlimited dreams, unlimited material comforts, perhaps the most important challenge for scientists is negotiating energy use with the impact of our living environment. I think the Office of Atom for Peace certainly will be concerned about how can we negotiate energy use with impact on our living environment. It was only 30 years ago with the 1972 UN Conference on the Human Environment that the dual environmental impact of technological change and population growth began to attract serious concern. As the world is becoming smaller and smaller, challenges for each country to combat a deteriorating living environment have become global problems and must be seen as challenges faced by all of humankind. You see, it was what I was saying that the population went up from 1.5 to 6 billion, and the Earth is spread to be shrunken. Holes in the ozone layer, the global warming trend, and the reduction of sunshine by 15% in Southeast Asia during the last several decades due to rampant pollution of burning the low-grade fuel are such examples. And the most important thing is, if you examine it in its entirety from the environmental perspective, we find that in many ways the world is overdeveloped. With the unceasing generation of carbon dioxide by human activities and the consequent worsening of global warming trend, the common practice of categorizing countries as developed, developing, and underdeveloped has become increasingly unrealistic. From an environmental point of view, even so-called developed and developing countries are often not sustainable and should also be categorized as overdeveloped. Unfortunately, every developing country has been attempting to closely follow the development model outlined by the so-called developed countries, particularly in their obsession with improving material comforts and increasing per capita income. As you know, Prime Minister Thaksin promised you, if you were to be elected, the per capita income will grow by 50% during the next 4 years. When I arrived at Berkeley, California, as a graduate student in 1962, Taiwan was extremely poor. The first day on campus, I was shocked to see people, after washing their hands in the restroom, using paper towels to dry their hands and then throwing the towels away. And at that time, I was shocked. I thought, a country which is so wasteful, how long a country lasts. My parents always taught me when I was young, if you live a wasteful life, you'll be punished by God. But today, the so civilized part of Southeast Asia seem to be mimicking the same wasteful process. 10 years ago, after spending 32 years in the United States then I did find Taiwan overdeveloped with all the carbon dioxide generated of forest or coral reef cannot absorb them back. And we are piling up all the waste. And I keep on thinking, how could we reverse the overdeveloped Taiwan in one ideal place? But our government keep on saying that we have to improve our competitiveness. Our per capita income is only $12,000. It's only 1/3 of the United States. We have to keep on developing. So these are very long direction. I thought Taiwan is already overdeveloped, and yet government keep on saying developing. The developed countries part of the growth, especially in Western countries, which require excessive and often wasteful consumption of natural resources, obviously are not the ideal models for not yet developed countries to emulate. We need to find a new sustainable model for developing, paying attention to harmonizing the relationship between humankind and nature. Well, it is interesting to note that when India became independent, in response to a question of how the people in that country could catch up with the standard of living of the people in Britain, Gandhi rightly explained, to achieve this standard of living for each population, England had to colonize the entire earth. If India wants to achieve the same standard for its vast population, one has to imagine how many earths it would require to colonize. I always give an example of something called in the civilized society. If you own a car, you drive around in a week, you use up 1 tank of gasoline. That's about 50 liters or 40 kilograms, bigger car. Or you use 40 kilograms of gasoline. And if you look at the gasoline, then the hydrocarbon, 1 carbon is 2 hydrogen. It's mass unit of 14, 12 carbon, 1 hydrogen each on both sides, 14. After you burn it, become carbon dioxide is 44. So weight is increased by a factor of 3. So 40 kilograms of gasoline after you burn it, it will produce 120 kilograms of carbon dioxide in a week. So you can imagine in the tailpipe of the car, in 1 week, 120 kilograms. It's about the weight of 2 grown up. 2 grown up, the same amount of carbon dioxide is spewing out from the tailpipe. Long time ago, when we did not realize carbon dioxide is harmful to our society because of the global warming trend, we always said nitric oxide, sulfur dioxide, ozone, so-called pollutants. And Western people come to Asia always complain about we are polluted, we produce too much pollution. But now, if you take carbon dioxide as pollutants, then you will see the more industrialized country, people become dirtier and dirtier. They produce 120 kilograms of carbon dioxide in 1 week. There's no animal on earth produce so much junk as human beings. Usually when you say cow will produce 1 kilogram of methane a week, but we have to produce 100 kilograms of carbon dioxide in 1 week. I don't know whether it will make us feel guilty or not. But if you were to live countryside and you go to work, by walking, then you don't produce 120 kilograms of carbon dioxide. So whether you own a car or riding bicycle, there's a tremendous difference when a person is cleaner. Well, it is in a sense very ironic that the global warming trend, a problem which could become so serious that it may eventually lead to the extinction of humanity, will only see when fossil fuels, upon which modern society has grown so dependent for it, and for its ability to drive prosperity and fuel convenience, are depleted. And you can imagine fossil fuel accumulated in the biosphere through the biological activities and buried underground. It's millions of years accumulated. And human society is going to burn it within the span of a couple hundred years. And the likely onset of the energy crisis due to the gap between supply and demand of petroleum will undoubtedly present a formidable challenge for mankind. It is interesting, we often say 20th century is century of America. If you analyze carefully, 20th century is the century of American oil industry. Burning oil, prosperity, automobile, and all those are really because of the oil. And if you look at the global reserves of the various types of fossil energy, unfortunately remain limited. Experts estimate that the crude oil will be fully depleted in 40 to 60 years, and the natural gas in 80 to 100 years. However, production will probably peak much area, perhaps within the next 20 to 40 years, for both crude oil and natural gas. This means that before we are halfway through this century, it is very likely that the gap between the energy demand and supply will have a permanent gap. And that gap will certainly induce the energy crisis, which will be here to stay. And that is assuming that the burning the coal, which is going to be so harmful to our environment, will not be the solution. But the way you look at the power generation of China, they are still burning lots of coal, and it will continue. So in a sense, coal burning, which is not desirable, but it will continue. But whether you burn the coal or not, petroleum demand and supply gap will induce energy crisis that will happen within 10, 20 years. It might happen sooner if the current development will continue in China, India, and other parts of Southeast Asia. The arrival of the energy crisis will also signal the arrival of a food shortage, as modern agriculture depends greatly on chemical fertilizers, which require a fair amount of energy to synthesize. If you go to a farm, you compare the organic farming and the farming use fertilizer, you will see there's really a difference of about 30% in the yield. It means when you eat a piece of bread, you have to realize that 30% of the bread is really coming from petroleum through fertilizers. These are the fertilizers fixing the nitrogen and then go into the bread. And 30% of the food production is directly attributed to petroleum. Without access to abundant and inexpensive energy, we will not have enough fertilizer to maintain such high efficiency in food production. And that the time probably in Thailand, and we examine the agriculture completely because in America and Canada, agriculture is really industry. You see the farming, with airplane, spreading fertilizer, insecticide, and when the energy crisis comes, that type of agriculture will not be efficient anymore because energy becomes very expensive. So the Asian way of agriculture without using much fertilizer, that was Asian in ancient times. Maybe something we have to look at more carefully. Additionally, at present, 60% of the fibers, mainly through synthesis of polyesters, through paraxylene, and 60% of the fibers are also attributed to petroleum. Thailand is a big producer of fibers, especially polyester. In the foreseeable future, energy crisis and the food shortage are most likely to become major causes of conflict in the globalized world. So at the present time, Asian countries always feel that we have abundant food. So in WTO, joining WTO, open up the market, we can sell agricultural products. But within 10-20 years, the picture will change completely. Certainly, we cannot go on as we have been. Things have to change. And we are the ones who must make it happen. We have to face the problem resulting from energy usage and its impact on our environment. If we will achieve the sustainable development for the entire world, we must mutually increase energy efficiency, reduce dependence on fossil fuel, develop renewable energies, maintain biodiversity, make a more careful examination of population policies, and reduce the consequences of all human activities on our living environment and ecosystem. Actually, if you look at these, increased energy efficiency, that might be the most important thing for us to do in the next 20-30 years. As a scientist, I know, for example, the lighting in this room is a fluorescent light compared to incandescent light is much more efficient. So compared to light emitting diode, that will improve another factor too, or even more. And light emitting diode is in the birds will become practical. It's a little more expensive to do. Air conditioning also. Heat pump could improve quite drastically to gain a factor 2 there. Automobile, by running hybrid engine, also we can save a factor 2. So energy saving, increased energy efficiency would be the most effective way that we can reduce the dependence on fossil fuel and make us comfortable as we are living today. Develop renewable energies is very important for the technology might not become available, like harvesting solar energy through photovoltaic cell or fusion research might take 30 to 50 years. Maintain biodiversity is certainly very important. Not only we can use biomass. When biodiversity is gone, human being will also be found wisdom. Population policies. In the industrialized society, population is not increasing as much anymore. Population is aging. So that's what we really have to do. Unless we work hard to do it, then we might not be able to turn things around in 20 years from now. I might not be here anymore. For many of you who are secret that they fighting for energy and food will make this world very unstable. But perhaps the most important of all, it is time for those who live in the developed countries and consume excess amount of natural resources ask themselves the question, if everyone on earth were to live like us, could earth carry the burden? To pay attention to is the fact that although globalization of the world economy is driving us toward a borderless society, it will not reduce the differences among peoples in various regions overnight. Next. Establishment of a new common global culture, together with more effective ways of communicating among all the people, will certainly take time. However, the differences among cultural heritages, languages, and religions that make this world so rich and colorful will not and should not be made to disappear. As the world shrinks in relative terms and contact between people becomes more frequent, whether or not cultural differences will cause an inevitable clash, as suggested by the well-known scholar Samuel Huntington of Harvard University, who seem to be entirely dependent on how well people around the world learn to communicate, understand, appreciate, and respect different cultural heritages. And establish the dialogue is really important, and that was the main reason the International Peace Foundation is holding a meeting like this. That was one of the reasons I'm here today. To become a good citizen of the global village, we need to learn quickly and also to teach our young people to see from a global perspective and to respect, appreciate, and understand the different cultures of different people. I do believe if we educate our young generation well, then the clash of civilization, as mentioned by Samuel Huntington, that might lead to the Third World War will not happen. I was born in Taiwan under Japanese occupation. I learned Japanese language and culture. Then after the Second World War, I learned Chinese language and Taiwanese language and all the cultures. Then I went to the United States. Meanwhile, I learned German language and Russian language. And as you learn more and more, I learned to communicate, understand different people from different backgrounds and different cultures. And there's no problem to communicate. And there's nothing called clash of civilizations for a well-educated people who learn, understand, appreciate, and respect different cultures of different peoples. Now, I want to switch gear a little bit and talk about the responsibility of scientists during the critical time that we are facing so many conflicts. As a scientist, I often ask myself if the advancement of science has really brought substantial benefit to mankind. Some might argue that the advancement of science and technology might have brought benefit to only about 1/3 of the people on Earth. Developed countries seem to have fared better than others. For example, when we glorify the tremendous impact of the Industrial Revolution, which started more than 250 years ago, learning to transform energy from one form to the other, invented various machines, so the machine can do work 100 times more powerful, more precise than human being. Next. And then that induced many different changes. But we must not forget that those countries that fail to catch the wave become colonies of Western powers and suffer immensely as a result. For example, when the Industrial Revolution was taking place, Western countries developed very quickly, expanded the sphere of their influence. On the other hand, South America, Africa, and main part of Asia was lagging behind, and those other places all become colonies. And we certainly suffered. Thailand was further fortunate, escaped it from. Next slide, please. In a sense, the recent history of mankind has been marked by strong competition among nations that is steep heavily in science and economic development. So in the Asian country, if you go to the classroom and try to teach youngsters that the Industrial Revolution brought benefit to mankind, they said, really? I thought Industrial Revolution made foreign Western countries become powerful and we became colonies. The advancement of technology only reached many hundred years later to the Southeast Asia. And although substantial progress has been made in recent years in international collaboration, the high-tech-based economic competition among nations, which centers around information technology, biotech, and nanoscience, is still playing the tune to which the entire world marches. It goes without saying that in this competition, there will be both winners and losers. Countries that lag behind in this round of competition will continue to be trapped in the cycle of poverty and misery. So here we just see some dilemma. We are in a globalized world now. Economy is globalized. Money flows with a lifetime visa from one country to the other. Businessmen and multinational companies all around. Pollution is also globalized. Yet nation-based competition will make some of the countries lagging behind and suffer from the consequences. We should all recognize that the fact that the increase in the interconnected world cannot be fully saved if a large percentage of its population still suffers from poverty, chronic diseases, illiteracy, unemployment, other barriers to survival. If somebody somewhere felt that they have a justifiable reason to fight for their survival, by all means, I don't think we will see the peace on earth. Scientists can play a key role in finding the solution to these problems, especially related to the energy and environment, and also the way we compete among nations. And this may be part of the reason why we are here today. Next. First of all, scientists should work together to make sure that the science shall not be used by some to dominate others or to cause damage to our living environment. In 1935, Sir Joseph Goldblatt, a Nobel Laureate, urged in his acceptance speech, the time has come to formulate guidelines for all ethical conduct of scientists, perhaps in the form of voluntary democratic votes. He argues that the scientists should not pursue scientific truth simply for truth's sake without considering the ethical implication of their research. He emphasizes the social responsibility of scientists and believes that holding an amoral attitude towards science is actually immoral, as personal responsibility should be tied to the consequences of one's action. Although the idea for a scientific ethic can be traced all the way back to Francis Bacon in the 17th century, pledges founded on the values and responsibilities shared among scientists and engineers have become quite common in recent years. For example, the Peace Pledge movement for scientists, launched in Japan in 1999, read, I understand below, pledge with honor and dignity, to the best of my knowledge, I will not participate in research, development, manufacture, acquisition, and utilization of nuclear weapons, as well as other weapons of mass destruction. Well, it is certainly very important for the individual scientist to see to it that science brings benefit to mankind. And it should not use, it's not to be used for evil purposes or to cause unexpected negative consequences. However, if we continue to engage in the fierce high-tech-based economic competition among nations, it might not be enough for the individual scientist to simply not participate in the research, development, manufacture, acquisition, and utilization of nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons, or their means of delivery. At the current stage of human development on Earth, there's a difference between the responsibility of the individual scientist and of scientists as a whole. If we do not fully appreciate and understand the rules of the game and the consequences of competition in the globalized market-driven economy, practicing the so-called good sciences for the greater good can still produce miserable losers among us when these good sciences are used as a tool of global economic competition. It is kind of ironic when you look at the current status of the world, look at the damage done to the environment, global warming trend. People might say, well, let all the industrial revolution reign. Because after the industrial revolution, nobody realized everybody will be driving the car so much. Well, this is certainly the use of the technology too excessively by everybody in a limited person. But what I'm talking about is doing good things. Everything's good. But because of the competition among nations, so far as science and technology were to be used as the tool of competition among nations, there will be winners and there will be losers. Winner will become prosperous, on the other hand, loser will become miserable. So, doing so-called good thing might not assure you that what we are doing is really going to help others. Just like the Industrial Revolution of the past, new global competition based on information, science, and biotechnology are sure to produce losers, and these nations will again remain poor and miserable. Next. We need to realize that the nation can sustain its prosperity only when surrounded by prosperous neighbors. A commitment to mutual prosperity and lifting our neighbors along with ourselves seems to be one of the best strategies in a globalized world. Really have to help each other in order to sustain the development. Well, I did mention about, although responsibility of scientists is quite clear, this responsibility of groups of scientists are not as clear what we are doing, whether really helping everybody or helping a group of people who become winners, and again make those miserable losers suffer consequences. All of those is actually related to so-called market-driven economy, sharing of the knowledge and technology, patent and intellectual property rights, and we really need to examine those. For centuries, the scientific knowledge accumulated by mankind has been shared quite freely among scientists. Scientists still generally believe firmly that the knowledge accumulated through their effort should be shared by all, as first advocated by Francis Bacon many years ago. Early last century, when Madame Curie was asked why she didn't apply for patents on her discoveries. After all, if she had done so, she would have been as wealthy as Thomas Edison at that time. The reply was quite simple. She did not want to take that advantage because she believed that the scientific knowledge should belong to all mankind. In fact, it was her idealistic mindset which first attracted me to science when I was young. But in a modern society, however, as scientific knowledge is further developed, transformed into technology, and put to use in society, it becomes the basis for economic competition. Protection of patent and intellectual property rights has become a very important issue, and the sharing of knowledge now only stops at the basic scientific knowledge and so-called pre-competitive technology when they are not very useful. Competitive technology is not freely shared. However, the gap or the time lag between scientific discovery and technology in the marketplace has become shorter and shorter. The lag was 100 years for automobile, 5 years for computers, and only 18 months for microprocessors. Now, in certain areas of scientific investigation, it is no longer possible to distinguish between basic and associated competitive technology. So basic research and applied research and development technology, sometimes boundary become blurred, we're getting very close. As the relationship between science and technology grows even closer, the dilemma of to share or not to share has become an important issue, not only for the application of technologies, but also for the basic scientific discoveries themselves. In Taiwan, I always go to the airport to meet some of the scientists who come to discuss science with us, share the knowledge. For the same airplane, you'll find lawyers come to sue some of the companies in Taiwan infringe upon the intellectual property right. So this is kind of interesting. Same airplane brought people from the same country. Some come to share, some try not to share. And there are lots of dilemmas. From a globalized viewpoint, it certainly does not seem fair if some countries produce most of the public health scientific knowledge, while others mainly dedicate themselves to protecting mission-oriented technological development to gain a competitive economic edge. Certainly, in a market-driven economy, free and open economic competition and adequate protection of intellectual property rights are necessary for development. By the mention of Madame Curie, didn't want the patent, but now, if she did no patent, people can use her knowledge to get patent themselves and will charge her using the patented knowledge that she created. And it's a dilemma now. So when I was at Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, the laboratory often asked me to apply for patent of things I know, and then transfer the patent to the government to make sure the patent will be well distributed and will be licensed to anybody who are interested. Yet we must ask seriously whether in a highly globalized world we can find a new and better way to allow the creation and sharing of knowledge while at the same time allowing technology to be carried out in a more orderly fashion to promote sustainable development for the entire world. Strong global public support for the advancement of science, the development of technology, and the shortening of the patent protection period might help push change in that direction. In recent years, in the field of high energy physics and astronomy, scientists have shared their knowledge quite freely and have been more willing to help each other across national boundaries. So in Taiwan, two things we pushed very hard during the last 20 years. One is synchronizers, accelerator-based technology. There, people share all the knowledge and try to help each other. So benefit a lot. So we do have a third generation synchronizers doing very good research, doing X-ray crystallography, chemical physics, material science research. As I said, those are accelerator-based. 10 years ago, we also joined Harvard Smithsonian to set up sub-millimeter wave telescope, arrays of sub-millimeter wave telescope. Those are the most advanced in the world now. Because astronomers also share all the knowledge. So we benefited, we made our contribution to build up the telescope. So this area, heavily publicly supported domain, sharing the knowledge is quite easy. On the other hand, in the field of biology, scientists tend to protect their intellectual property rights more tightly. In an international meeting of biological sciences, it is often seen that scientists try to learn as much as possible and review as little as they can on critical issues that might increase competitiveness or become intellectual property in the near future. I have a brother, and my older brother is a professor at Johns Hopkins, working on carbohydrate. In when I was in Chicago, University of Chicago, as a professor, he came to American Chemical Society meeting in the carbohydrate session. He gave a talk, and then he didn't want to go to the division dinner. I said, why not? I said, I don't want to talk to them. They keep on asking me what am I doing, and I don't want to tell them what am I doing, because they have a bigger group. If I tell them what I'm doing, they will do it immediately, sooner and quicker. And I was shocked, because at the time, if anybody in the world said, Professor Lee, I'm doing molecular beam experiment and do not know why I copy your machine doesn't seem to work. I said, okay, I come to help. I fly out and go to Germany and England, Japan, and help the machine one by one. I went to Italy, and all the machine will be money. So I told my brothers, we're different. Physical chemists, trying to help everybody, and so make a group of scientists doing as well as we do. But they are different breed. dominant many areas biological research is worth studying in greater detail. If it is true, then I certainly would advocate research has to be supported globally and share all the knowledge together and develop technology together. At the present time, astronomy is now become a global activity now. We share knowledge. So now, for the submitting with the telescope, there's a program called ARMA. Every country in Europe, Japan will join forces, including Russia, to build submitting the weather telescope in Chile, the mountain of Chile, or 5,000 meters high. That will be a really a global collaboration. Fusion research, now it takes so much money, so Japan, America, Europe are trying to work together and make the fusion reactor and share the knowledge later. But that discussion is still not going very well. It's not decided whether it will be located in Japan or France. But public support of basic research, support more and more, certainly will benefit mankind more than private sector dominating. Private sector is very important, but should not allow them to dominate in a licensing period. Patent period might be shortened, so after the money will be available to everyone. Well, 21st century will be a critical turning point for mankind. I'm quite certain that the globalization of the world economy will ultimately reduce the risk of military confrontations used to settle international disputes. If what replaces military confrontation, however, is simply high-tech-based economic competition, then the tension between advancement of science and the sharing of technology, between economic rationality and the political passion of nation states will not be resolved. No, not very. And advancement of science and technology will continue to be used as a tool of domination by some, rather than for the liberation for all. If, however, we learn to solve problems together, learn to share knowledge, new technological options, and the limited resources available, learn to respect and understand the different cultural heritages, then it will be possible to realize the establishment of a genuine global village that promotes sustainable development for all. I think this is the first time in human history that all human beings on earth have been faced with learning to work together and live together as one family in a global village. This year, thank you. This year, theme of APEC is called One Community for Our Future. It really means that we have to operate as one community. The entire world has to operate as one community. Then we don't have a future. This is the first time for finally realizing that the planet Earth is finite in space, capacity, and natural resources. This is a necessary awakening, vital for the survival and sustainable development of mankind. I believe that if we make the correct choice at this crossroads, then the 21st century is likely to be marked as the great turning point, the great transition toward the dawning of a new era in the history mankind to really come to a turning point that we have to wake up. We have to wake up. If we do not wake up, you see 1,000 years from now, when the children learning history in the classroom, they will say, the end of the 20th century and toward the 21st century, our ancestor is a bunch of dumb people who just pollute the environment and ruin the ecosystems and make the earth miserable and almost cause human beings to extinguish from the surface of the earth. There's only one way, and that world really has to work together as a community, and I deeply believe in. So anything we can promote international collaboration from research, production, anything. International help each other, and we have to compete to help who can help those miserable countries better. And if we set our mind to do so, then we'll have a new future. And I do believe when the entire world learn to operate as a unit, then we'll have a new history of mankind. Later on, the history book will say that the so-called the age of barbarians. 21st century, before 21st century, it's called age of barbarians. Although they invented lots of things that seem to be useful, but they are not reasonable. The 21st century, people on earth started to work together as a family, try to help each other to maintain the sustainable development. Those the beginning of new era of mankind. Well, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you ครับสวัสดีครับก็ผมจะขออนุญาตสรุปความจากที่ท่านวิทยากร Professor Lee กล่าวมาอย่างสั้นๆนะครับท่านได้เริ่มบรรยายที่ว่าโลกใบนี้เนี่ยเริ่มจากความคิดเริ่มแรกเนี่ยคือเรามีความคิดว่าโลกเนี่ยมีขอบเขตที่ไม่จำกัดมี unlimited space แต่ในความเป็นจริงเนี่ยมันเป็นโลกเราเนี่ยมีข้อจำกัดอยู่หลายข้อโดยเฉพาะทางด้าน resources นะครับทางด้านว่าจริงๆแล้วโดยเฉพาะหลังจากเกิดปฏิวัติอุตสาหกรรมหรือ Industrial Revolution ขึ้นเนี่ยคนก็เริ่มที่จะเปลี่ยนความคิดจากที่คิดว่าไม่ว่าเราจะทำกิจกรรมอะไรบนโลกใบนี้เราก็ยังมี resource เพียงพอเนี่ยมาสู่ว่าโลกเราเนี่ยมีข้อจำกัดในด้าน resource นะครับแล้วท่านก็ได้ยกตัวอย่างว่าปัญหาที่เกิดขึ้นณทุกวันนี้เนี่ยก็คือมีปัญหาการบริโภคทรัพยากรอย่างฟุ่มเฟือยถึงแม้ว่าไม่ว่าเราเนี่ยอาจจะมีเรียกว่าประเทศที่กำลังพัฒนาและประเทศที่พัฒนาแล้วทั้ง developed หรือ developing เนี่ยไม่ว่าจะยังไงก็ตามเนี่ยแต่ในความเป็นจริงเนี่ยเราทุกคนเนี่ยอยู่ในสถานะที่เรียกว่า over developed ตัวอย่างที่ท่านยกก็คือการปลดปล่อยก๊าซคาร์บอนไดออกไซด์ที่มากเกินไปปัญหาภาวะโลกร้อนหรือ global warming ที่ทุกประเทศไม่ว่าจะเป็นประเทศที่พัฒนาแล้วหรือกำลังพัฒนาเนี่ยก็ได้ประสบปัญหาอีกปัญหาหนึ่งที่พบก็คือปัญหาการขาดแคลนพลังงานหรือ energy crisis ที่หลายๆประเทศโดยเฉพาะประเทศที่พัฒนาแล้วเนี่ยก็ได้ประสบปัญหาด้วยตัวเองเนี่ยก็คือทุกวันนี้เนี่ยเราทุกคนเนี่ยควรต้องหันมาตระหนักว่าพลังงานเนี่ยกำลังจะหมดจริงๆเพราะว่าเราเนี่ยพึ่งพาน้ำมันอย่างมากแล้วก็ก๊าซธรรมชาติซึ่งท่านก็ได้บอกว่าน้ำมันเนี่ยอาจจะหมดภายใน 40-60 ปีก๊าซธรรมชาติอีก 80-100 ปีเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยท่านก็ได้เสนอแนะวิธีว่าเราจะต้องหันมาตระหนักแล้วก็ประหยัดการใช้พลังงานหรือการใช้ทรัพยากรนะครับก็คือแนวทางที่ท่านได้คร่าวๆ5 ข้อคือ1คือ energy efficiency ก็คือการใช้พลังงานอย่างมีประสิทธิภาพ การลดภาระพึ่งพาพลังงานที่เรียกว่าประเภท fossil fuel คือพลังงานที่ใช้แล้วหมดไปอย่างเช่นน้ำมันก๊าซธรรมชาติการหันมาให้ความสนใจ renewable energy หรือพลังงานทดแทนก็คือตัวอย่างเช่นก็คือพลังงานลมแสงอาทิตย์ชีวมวลเราก็มีการ maintain biodiversity ก็คือการคงไว้ซึ่งความหลากหลายทางชีวภาพแล้วก็มีการตรวจสอบนโยบายการใช้มีการวางนโยบายที่ดีนะครับ population policy ว่าเราจะมีการวางนโยบายอย่างไรเพื่อใช้พลังงานต่างๆอย่างคุ้มค่าแล้วก็มีการสิ่งสำคัญที่ลืมไม่ได้คือการรักษาสมดุลของสิ่งแวดล้อมแล้วก็สภาวะแวดล้อมนะครับ ecosystem เกี่ยวกับนิเวศวิทยานั่นคือปัญหาที่เกิดขึ้นจากโลกที่เปลี่ยนไปแล้วท่านเนี่ยก็ได้พูดว่าทุกวันนี้เนี่ยเราทุกคนเนี่ยได้ก้าวเข้าสู่ globalized world ก็คือเมืองโลกแห่งไร้ขีดจำกัดคือทุกคนเนี่ยติดต่อสื่อสารกับทุกคนได้เนี่ยท่านบอกว่าการที่เราจะอยู่รวมกันได้เนี่ยเราจะต้องเรียนรู้ที่จะเข้าใจมีการสื่อสารที่ดีมีการ appreciate มีการรู้ซึ้งและตระหนักและก็ให้ความเคารพถึงวัฒนธรรมที่แตกต่างกันไปนะครับเพื่อที่จะให้เราอยู่บนโลกที่เปลี่ยนไปได้อย่างสันติภาพนะครับแล้วท่านก็ประเด็นสุดท้ายท่านก็พูดว่าบทบาทในฐานะที่เราเป็นนักวิทยาศาสตร์เนี่ยเราจะในฐานะ scientist เนี่ยเราจะต้องทำยังไงก็คือว่าเนื่องจากว่าการพัฒนาวิทยาศาสตร์และเทคโนโลยีเนี่ยก็ได้พัฒนามากขึ้นไปเรื่อยๆแต่เราได้ย้อนมองหรือเปล่าว่าการพัฒนาเนี่ยมันจะเป็นการพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืนจริงๆหรือเปล่าหรือจะมีผลร้ายอะไรกับเราหรือเปล่าเพราะว่าตั้งแต่มีการปฏิวัติอุตสาหกรรมเนี่ยก็จะมีประเทศที่ได้ประโยชน์จากการพัฒนาเทคโนโลยีแต่ในขณะเดียวกันก็จะมีประเทศที่สูญเสียประโยชน์นะครับที่ต้องตกเป็นมือขึ้นแล้วท่านก็ได้นิยามศัพท์ขึ้นมาหนึ่งคำนะครับหรือก็คือคำว่า food science ท่านก็บอกว่าเราในฐานะนักวิทยาศาสตร์ทุกคนเนี่ยจะต้องใช้ food science เนี่ยเพื่อมาพัฒนามากกว่าที่จะมาทำให้เกิดการแข่งขันทางธุรกิจกันแล้วท่านก็ยกตัวอย่างมาดามคูรีว่าที่มาดามคูรีเนี่ยไม่ได้ขอจดสิทธิบัตรในสิ่งที่ท่านได้คิดค้นพบเนี่ยท่านตอบว่าท่านมาดามคูรีท่านก็ตอบว่าความรู้ทางวิทยาศาสตร์เนี่ยคนทุกคนควรจะเป็นเจ้าของก็คือมีการเผยแพร่แล้วท่านก็เลยยกตัวอย่างว่าในปัจจุบันเนี้ยเราทุกคนเนี่ยให้ความสำคัญกับการจดลิขสิทธิ์สิทธิบัตรทรัพย์สินทางปัญญาท่านก็เลยให้มุมมองไว้นะครับว่าเราก็ต้องเลือกระหว่างการต้องมีการทำให้สมดุลระหว่างว่าลิขสิทธิ์สิทธิบัตรนั้นเนี่ยคือความรู้ทางวิทยาศาสตร์เนี่ยควรจะมีคนใดคนหนึ่งเป็นเจ้าของหรือเป็นของทุกคนแต่ในขณะเดียวกันเราก็ต้องมีการคือคำถามก็คือว่าเราควรจะแชร์หรือเราควรจะไม่แชร์นะครับก็คือให้ย้อนคิดว่าพัฒนาก็เป็นสิ่งที่ดีแต่ถ้าเกิดพัฒนาแล้วจะต้องเก็บไว้กับตัวเองหรือต้องเอามาเป็นประโยชน์ของตัวเองแต่เพียงผู้เดียวเนี่ยเพื่อเป็นการไปหาประโยชน์จากคนอื่นเนี่ยจะเป็นสิ่งที่ดีหรือเปล่าแล้วท่านก็สรุปว่าถ้าเราจะต้องการพัฒนาอย่างยั่งยืนหรือถ้าเกิดสมมติผมจะขอยกพระราชดำรัสของในหลวงคือที่ท่านเสนอคือการพัฒนาอย่างยั่งยืนเนี่ยพระราชดำรัสของเจ้าอยู่หัวเราเนี่ยก็จะต้องมีวิธีทั้งหมดก็คือ5วิธีคือ1เราทุกคนร่วมกันแก้ปัญหาเราทุกคนต้องมีใจเปิดรับที่จะมีความยินดีที่จะแชร์ knowledge ที่จะเผยแพร่ความรู้ที่เรามีให้กับคนอื่นในขณะเดียวกันเราก็ต้องมองว่าทรัพยากรของเราเนี่ยมีอย่างจำกัดใช้ยังไงได้คุ้มค่าแล้วเราก็ต้องเรียนรู้ที่จะเข้าใจวัฒนธรรมของคนอื่นเพื่อที่จะได้อยู่ร่วมกันบนโลกใบนี้อย่างมีความสุขมากกว่าที่จะคิดแต่พัฒนาวิทยาศาสตร์ให้ยั่งยืนขึ้นไปนะครับขอบคุณมากครับ
If any of you don't feel comfortable asking in English, we can always translate for you anytime.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Lee. I'm a nuclear physicist from Atoms for Peace. I'd like to ask for your mention. You did mention about the nuclear energy. Could you please elaborate more about nuclear energy instead of fossil fuel and renewable energy?
10 years ago, or 20 years ago, many developed countries looked at the problem associated with the nuclear waste, not as much as safety program for nuclear power plant is really not a major problem. But handling the nuclear waste is so difficult. The reason is you have to monitor the nuclear waste for many hundred years. Government is not stable. Every 4 years there's an election, and soon they forget about what they have to do. So gradually giving up on the nuclear energy because of the waste. That was the time before realizing the global warming trend became so serious. So now, if we look at the global warming trend in the nuclear waste, people started to think that the nuclear waste problem might be easier to handle compared to the carbon dioxide. Actually, if you burn coal, it's really not that the carbon dioxide, other bad problems. So I do believe before hydrogen come along, that will take 50 years. I think if you work very, very hard, maybe 40 years, the way things are going, it probably takes 50 more years before fusion power plant become usable. So during the time, I do not believe the harvest in the solar energy to standardize the unit and take care of the waste management program. And I also believe that in the next 50 years, conventional nuclear power plant might not be avoidable in many parts of the world. In Taiwan, we are building the fourth nuclear power plant. We have a substantial amount of electricity generated by nuclear power plant. A ruling party said they want to have a nuclear-free country, so they are opposing nuclear energy. I keep on arguing that, yes, I also agree that conventional nuclear power plant might be phased out, but not now, in 50 years. In 50 years. And I believe in the United States, Japan, especially in China, they work with the nuclear energy in a conventional way. And of course, like breeder reactor is the one which will burn all the fuel down to minimal amount, but because produce plutonium and then convert it into weapon, so people are avoiding breeder reactors. So I do see that in the future, if the United States were to become a nuclear power plant exporting company, they will have to work with countries all over the world, standardize it, and bring the waste back for recycling. Otherwise, it will not do the job.
There's a question in the back.
Would you have a comment about GMO food? Are there food for human beings?
I think for quite a long time, the argument between the United States and Europe are really between greedy corporations and rich farmers. If you look at the scientific basis, scientific point of view, GMO certainly will bring more benefit to mankind than one has to be careful about. Of course, the use of the gene modification, one has to be careful. For example, if you plant cotton and kill all the insects, if you influence the biodiversity and change the food chain, one has to isolate the planting in an area, so completely isolate. On the other hand, if you look at the bean, tomato, all those kinds of things, when you go through the digestive system, I do not believe it will bring harm to the people. One has to be careful. One has to be careful. But all those could be, research could be done to prove that it could be okay. The GMO will be really needed in the developing countries, especially densely populated area where food is in shortage. So once we are careful, I think it's okay. I'll tell you one story though. Somebody will ask the question, if you keep on eating GMO, after 100 years, what will happen to you? I will say 100 years, I will not be here. I have a friend called Murray Kent at the University of Chicago. When he was 8 years old, at that time, we were talking about tuna as a mercury contamination. And he liked tuna. He keep on saying that I think mercury will not hurt me because I'm 8 years old. I'm going to go very soon anyway. I'm not talking about GMO. It's that time. It's not. But one often wonder if you accumulate in human body for hundreds of years with different GMO food, what will happen? I said, you don't worry about something accumulated for 100 years. So far as I know, based on the recent research, GMO become more and more positive. Even European scientific community is now endorsing GMO. Has to go full power to do the research on GMO. In Taiwan, we in Academia Sinica, we are doing the research in GMO, and also we are using the zebrafish to test the GMO and see if we have patience and we go through the species with a very fast, very short life cycle and go through generation after generations. But GMO is certainly one hope, without using fertilizer.
Rosalie, thank you very much for the wonderful lecture, and I truly admire your vision of solve problems together, learn to share knowledge, learn to respect and understand different cultural heritage. But my question is, what would be the mechanism to allow us to do so? Who will be the main players in that? Because look at the reality of the world nowadays, it's not like that at all. Even in the small corner of the world like Thailand, we don't have that kind of cultural, we still don't have that kind of respect for other culture, and that leads to a lot of problems, as you may know at the moment. And if you look at other countries, different corners of the world, we're full of that. We don't respect one another. And what will start that? What will start pushing us towards that kind of respect and sharing? And I would love to hear your thought on that. Thank you, sir.
Well, Uwe Morawetz sitting here. You will not agree with it. He came to Thailand because he found the culture of Thai people, especially very tolerant, very polite. There are many good things in Thailand that other people around the world should learn. I think in Southeast Asia, people travel around always like Thailand because people are nicer, they are very polite, and very tolerant. And I think in comparison, you are tolerant and also you can accept diversity somewhat better. But actually, one thing I honestly have to say that at the present time, if you look at the world, all the young people are really contaminated too much by Michael Jackson and all the Western culture, pop culture, and to an extent it's really horrifying. When I came to Asian Games in 6 years ago, I flew into Bangkok, attended the opening ceremony of Asian Games. I was really impressed. All the performances None of them are Western. All the performances are Thai cultural heritage. Very colorful, and the color is very smooth. Lots of golden color, silver color. The color was so smooth, and that opening ceremony I still remember. That is very different from Hollywood style Olympic opening ceremony. So I do believe that in Thailand you have an excellent cultural heritage, and people should learn and should show respect. I came back to Taiwan 10 years ago, became the president of Academia Sinica. At that time, I hired somebody called Professor Zhang. He's a member of U.S. National Academy of Sciences, archaeologist, anthropologist. And I asked him to become vice president, actually vice president, and he will have to take care of humanity, social sciences. And one thing he insisted to do, and I agree with him completely, you look at human history. Asia has an ancient history and also cultural heritages, and that is very important. For example, you look at the Asian philosophy of learning, Confucius would say, man and the nature are but one. He understood that the men are the part of the ecology. We are not the master of the land. And we survived for thousands of years with our unique philosophy and living on this earth harmoniously with nature. And Professor Zhang was saying that if we look forward from 21st century, the mainstream of culture is not dominated by Western culture. The Eastern culture is missing somehow, so-called the mainstream. And that is very bad. So he was working so hard. He looked at the history of ancient China, India, and other parts of the world, and trying to let people all over the world understand cultural heritage of Asia. And so, in order to have a sustainable development of mankind, all the experiences accumulated thousands of years has to be accommodated as an entirety. In the present time, it certainly is not good that the Hollywood movie influenced too much. McDonald's hamburger, and maybe not as important in Thailand, but Western influence is too much at the present time. It has the worry of wiping out some of the nice local cultures in different smaller Asian countries. As to the reason why you didn't agree when I said nice things about Thailand, I don't understand. Uwe is back now. I was quoting that you said you came to Thailand because Thai people are more tolerant. And I said in comparison, it is true.
Not in certain parts of the country, that's for sure, if you read the paper.
Right.
But anyway, my question still remains that, okay, you mentioned the domination of the Western culture in the world at the moment. Well, my question is, what would be the mechanism to push the Western country, let's say, the United States, to accept or to respect the heritage of other countries and start working with them to share their knowledge with us, telling us what they know about technology, science, instead of charging us high amount of loyalty to give us that knowledge.
I think if we who live in Asia were to find a new way of life that is going to be sustainable in United States or Europe, said that should be the way mankind should go, then they will respect us. At the present time, the United States is against anything to stop global warming trend. Rio de Janeiro, yesterday's meeting, I was very disappointed that the United States again signed the Kyoto Protocol because, as I was mentioning, the last century is to develop, it's the century of America. It's really the century of American oil industry. Oil industry dominated the way American society developed. So cities spread out so thin. If we increase the oil price or have a high carbon tax, the United States will lose the competitiveness. So when we show the way, and that's a stupid way, there are better way human society could be organized. We can live a comfortable life, beautiful life, without using lots of natural resources. Then people in America will respect us. Actually, it's interesting. All of us are doing something, and we have contact with Western people. When I was doing PhD thesis and afterwards doing postdoctoral research, when I worked with Professor Hirschbach at Harvard University, I designed a machine very, very complicated. So every time he look at my drawing, he cannot imagine how a young boy who design such a complicated machine with 8 chambers which rotate and determine velocity, mass at the same time. And the comment he made was interesting. He said, if not somebody from Asia with 5,000 years of cultural heritage, I don't think anybody would design a machine so complicated. I took it as a compliment because Asian people are more complicated in a sense. We went through social structures more complicated. Everybody was linked together. So you don't do it in an individualistic way. When you do things, you don't have to worry about what your uncle is going to think, what your grandfather is going to think, or you always think very different ways. So if we do well, we impress them. So society, I'm sure if Thailand were to develop in a more reasonable fashion, people will pay attention to the knowledge. It will take time.
Thank you. For those of you with more questions and comments, please feel free to discuss with Professor Lee at the end of the seminar. This seminar will remain open until 12:30 p.m. Today, Professor Yuan T. Lee has shared with us his thoughts and experiences on how science and technology bring peace to the world. Through this session, participants have learned a great deal from his thought-provoking presentation. We will apply what we have learned today to better our work for the good of the community at large. And at this moment, I would like to invite the Secretary, General of the Office of Patent for Peace, Mr. Yuan T, to kindly present to Professor Lee his token of our appreciation. May I have the honor of the Inspector General of the Ministry of Science and Technology, Dr. Uwe Morawetz, to present a souvenir to Professor Lee and give a closing remark.
Dear Honorable Professor Lee, distinguished guests, I decided to give the closing remarks first before I present this souvenir. The reason being that throughout the lecture, I'm very much impressed of the proposals of the motivation he gave us, both in academic areas and in the development areas of the country and even of the world. Thai culture. I think this is very true, and the UN has also recognized Thailand as a country with a culture of peace and tolerance. That's why the British and the International Peace Foundation came to Thailand for their first series of the activities. There have been very much said about Professor Lee's proposal how to make the world sustainable. I would not like to repeat that. I would like to say that because of the Thai culture, the plurality in the Thai society has brought Thailand to an independent country. Because of that, we survived the colonization after and before the World War II. And again, I'm sure that today the Thai culture can also show the world the way forward, how to develop a sustainable society, a sustainable development. Although the lifestyle will not be the same as the Western world. But we have our own lifestyle. Actually, we have our own economic structure. But we have not recognized that in a formal way. We take the economic structure or theory from the Western countries. But if we try and think hard, we have our own economic structure. Our economic structure builds in the family structure. That like Professor was rightly said, that when we don't want to do anything, we have to think of how our uncle would think about it, how our grandfather would think about it. And that thinking, that culture has been built in Asian society as a whole. And that should be part of the economic structure. We cannot live with totally Western culture in Thailand or in Asia. I have a book with me today that shows our way forward in Thailand, how to best develop Thailand in a sustainable way. It's a book called Concepts and Theories of His Majesty the King on Development. And many things said in this book will be in line with what Professor Lee has suggested. But it is presented in different ways. It's presented not in the theory that we are familiar with, in the scientific nature, in scientific fashion, but it is presented in a practical way, coming from experience and experiment. So, without delay, I would like them to present Dr. Lee with this book, presenting the book on the development that His Majesty the King has shown to the Thai people. And that's the way forward that we all Thai people should follow.